Well, welcome back to the podcast. As you may know, or maybe you don't know yet, my name is Paulette Rigo, and I, yes, am the host of the Better Divorce podcast. I started this podcast almost 9 years ago to help people just like you make sense out of chaos because divorce is, well, change. Every aspect of your life will change. And in this episode, I wanted to bring to you some conversations about what to do with the property, whether that be a marital property or a business property or just property that you own. Many times we get attached or comfortable in our home. And there's nothing wrong with comfort, everyone. Don't get me wrong. I love my pillows and flowers too. But when you go through divorce, that can sometimes change, maybe. So grab your notebook and take a comfortable seat, grab something yummy to snack on and a great drink, and jump into this conversation with me. I welcome Edith Espinola. She is a real estate expert as well as a transformation coach and a manifestation coach. Having a little bit of experience in some of those aspects, I know the two of us are going to have a splendid conversation and get along just fine. So, Edith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Paulette. I really appreciate you having me here today.
It's my welcome and my honor, and you're welcome. I haven't had any coffee. I'm just drinking the water still. And anyway, so let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your story so we get to know you, why you would want to help people through this very difficult, very painful process so that it is, well, a little bit better.
So back in 2010, my husband at the time and I had separated. We were trying to figure out if we wanted to continue with our marriage or if we were going to divorce. We still didn't know yet. And then he died suddenly of a massive heart attack. So in a way, I felt like he died in the middle of an argument. It was very frustrating. It was very difficult, and my life just blew apart. I didn't recognize who I was. I felt such a big sense of loss, of grief. I felt like my soul had been ripped open, and I had found that I couldn't really focus on doing what I needed to do just to survive. And at the time, I was also taking care of my father, who died 7 months later of cancer. So I found myself walking around in shock and in a daze. And I didn't work for a whole year because of all of the things going on, my emotions. So I lost everything. And what that did to me was that it made me realize that if I wanted to create a life that I would be happy with and that could take me where I needed to go, then after losing everything, that was the perfect time to start and rebuild and reinvent myself. So I know that although my story doesn't involve divorce, that sense of loss and that sense of separation, I feel that I can relate to the spouses that are now divorced. And my role, what I try to do as an agent is help mostly the women, help them to sell the property that they're in and to find where they're going to call home.
Well, I could not agree with you more in everything that just came out of your mouth. And I don't want to segue too much, but I find a tiny bit of humor in the sense that many people come to me and sarcastically will jokingly say, "Oh, it would just be so much easier if he would die."
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of catches you off guard because you're like, really? Like, okay. And I have an intimate relationship with my clients. It's sacred space. And trust me, there's nothing they can't say. And it doesn't leave this office or my ears or my phone or my fingers or whatever method of communication we're using. And I use them all. So Signal, Telegraph, WhatsApp, Zoom, FaceTime, voice memo. Uh, what's that other one? beep beep. Anyway, Voxer.
Oh yeah, boxer.
There's so many now. It's crazy. If you could see the apps on my phone, Edith, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of, what are those things? So, because everybody wants to communicate differently. But,
Absolutely.
sometimes it'll just be some off the cuff comment or a heartfelt 2 hour cry. But there is like, it would just be so much simpler or less difficult, or I won't have to hurt him. I won't have to say anything. It will just, manifest. And what I want will just come true, and then of course we come off that ladder and back to reality and take a deep breath. But so,
Right.
to your situation, wow. I mean, you were in this marriage, or
Yes.
where you were thinking about, should we stay married? Should we not stay married? Like, should we stay married? Should we go to counseling? Should we separate? Like, what does that even look like? How do we separate? Is there a legal separation, or is it just, hey, get an apartment and what have you? Because that's a whole nother conversation. In
Right.
some states, legal separation is a real thing. And in some states, it's, well, not a real thing. And in some countries, it's required. Some countries, it's not a real thing. So everybody has their different demographics to come to from. But the emotional side is
Yes.
different than the paper side, right? So here you now found yourself a widow,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
you lose your dad soon thereafter. And
Right.
many people may or may not know, but those stages of divorce are paralleled to the stages of death or the stages of grieving. And we
Right.
grieve lots of things. What do we grieve? Bankruptcy,
Right.
divorce, death, job loss, all kinds of situations, losses. Um,
Right.
um, post-traumatic stress issues from
Oh,
trauma can also be considered, a stage of grieving too.
yes.
And I know this isn't a conversation on mental health, but it does have its impact. So here you are, trying to reinvent, recreate, manifest your new life, and which you have done brilliantly and successfully and fabulously. So kudos to you. Congratulations. And we're all a work in progress, right? It
Oh,
isn't like, oh
absolutely.
yeah, well, I work, next, so, as we throw the shawl over our shoulder, and,
Right.
but we do have to have a little bit of sense of humor about that, because I was yesterday I was looking for a book, and I have this big closet of books, and in there I had all these old journals, and I went to Maui back in 2016 and worked with Mastin Kipp, and it was this journal all about wealthy healer. And of course,
Mm,
I was in the woo woo world at the time, and I was moving to Belize, and there was all of these notes I had taken about what I wanted to manifest.
yes.
Crazy. Well, I would say about 60% of them have. And the 40% of the things I wanted to manifest back then, thank God they didn't.
Right. Oh, thank God
Love it
for
now.
unanswered prayers.
Yeah. So be careful what you wish for. I always
Right.
say, right? Be very select in the power of what I call law of attraction with
Yes.
my friend Taylor, back in Rhode Island. So let's talk a little bit about being a realtor and
Mhm.
your expertise in helping women. Not that we don't love men. Men are wonderful. We love you, men. In manifesting that new home or a new life, how do you help your customers, clients, work with you so that that can happen? Because there's so much emotion
Oh, yeah.
and financial impact, and making that a bowl of emotion, what I like to call the bowl of emotion, which used to look like a beautiful fresh fruit salad, but now it probably looks more like week old oatmeal with 2 dozen raw eggs with a bottle of hot sauce thrown in.
Right. Right.
Messy, sticky, kind of smelly, so we have to wash it off. And have you ever tried to wash oatmeal?
Yeah.
It
It's not
doesn't go well. Yeah. We can wash all kinds of things off. When you drop something on the floor, you just say, oh, wash it off.
yes.
Like an apple. Yeah, you can wash an apple. That's fine. But don't wash oatmeal. No. And raw eggs, yeah, that doesn't work either. So I came up with this visual for people, and they go, that's a really good description. So how do you help them? Because we do want to turn that bowl of emotion into something pretty.
Right, right, absolutely. So it is true that I do help mostly women, and they're women that are at the high levels. They're in the C-suite, they're directors, they're, women of substance, women who are educated, women who know what they want. And they're usually the ones that are thinking about the children and when they're deciding on where it is that they want to live. So, one of the things, and I'm sure you and a lot of your audience, your listeners understand, is there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger and
Resentment. Yeah.
a lot of resentment. And, preparing to sell the home is one aspect. And, I always tell my clients, you're going to divorce the home. You want to break all emotional ties, all physical ties. Once you decide that you're going to sell, then it's no longer your home. And it makes it much easier in preparing it for sale because you're saying goodbye to the marriage. You're saying goodbye to the past. You're saying goodbye to the dreams that you were promised. You're saying goodbye to the home that you shared. And so there's emotion and there's grief that, they work through. And I'm always so impressed with the resilience of women, like, understanding that this is not the end. The pain is there, the anger is there, but they have the ability, we as women have the ability to focus on what's really important in the moment. Like we could put aside all of those emotions until later. I'll cry later. I'll break down tomorrow. I'll cry myself to sleep tonight. But right now, I'm going to prepare this house for sale and make it look as beautiful as I know that it can.
Mm.
And when we start to focus on where they want to buy, then that's really where it gets juicy. What I do with them is I do what we call a buyer consultation. And I have the conversation with them to figure out what kind of life they want to live. Where do they see themselves in 5 years? And what is it that's important in the home that they live in? It's really fun when they start to sit down and say, I've always wanted to live in this city, and they'll list a city. I've always wanted to have a nice backyard where it's just enough for the dog, but not too much for me to have to do work in. Or, I want room for the kids. I want to live in this neighborhood so that now we can't afford private school. So we need to make sure we go to a good public school. So zip code and school district become very important. Another thing is, how do they want to feel when they live in the home? A lot of people really enjoy having lots of natural sunlight coming in. So we're looking at, how many big windows are there? Where does the sunlight come in? What direction does it come in from? Is it where, is the kitchen a nice bright area in the morning? And then you can just have the living room can be more, nice natural light, but more dim, more quiet, the bedrooms. So I get to find out, like, what is the ideal home? How do they see themselves living in it? For example, a lot of my clients who have children, they want the kitchen to look out into the backyard and to be connected to the family room or the living space that the family's going to spend most of their time. And so if we're looking at a home and it does not have that layout, now that we've discussed it and now we know what the buyer wants, now we can say, this doesn't fit, we'll move on. And a
Mm.
lot of what that is trusting that what they want, what the buyer wants, she's going to find.
Yeah, it's I'm having so many memories, particularly when you said saying goodbye to the house. So, thinking back to my conversation I had with my attorney when I had come to that soul searching, soul sucking decision of yes, I cannot stand this marriage. I need to leave the marriage. I remember doing my research, and my father's financial advisor actually found my attorney for me, which was another karmic conversation we could discuss for hours later.
Mhm.
But I sat in Marty's office on the 36th floor of Longfellow Place in Boston, overlooking the harbor and the Charles River. I could see Cambridge to my left and the clock tower over Faneuil Hall to my right, straight ahead. And I remember sitting there in the winter, and he said to me, "What do you want?" And
Mhm.
I sat there 5, 10 seconds and looked around, and because of course the answer was, "I don't know." But I didn't
Right.
want to say that. I didn't want to sound ignorant or stupid. So I said, and this was just my heart jumping out of me, "I want my life back."
Mm. That makes
And
so
he said to me, "I can't give you that." And so a little tear rolled down my cheek because that's what I felt I lost myself, that I
yeah.
never took the time to get to manifest or know. I got married so young and for all the wrong reasons. Not that it was his fault or, it was just life happening. And, we did the best we could. And then I sat back and I said, well, correction. I don't know if I used the word correction, but in my head, I said, I just want a little convertible and a house by the water. I think I used cottage by the water, house by the water. I can't remember that, whether I said house or cottage.
Oh, I
And
love
of course, almost 20 years later, I drive a Mini Cooper convertible and I
it.
have a little house on a lake. I did have a house in the Caribbean, but that's a whole nother 5-hour conversation. But it took me a long time to get there. And it was never about the car or the house, Edith. Never,
Right.
right? It was really about taking the time to answer the question that I had allowed everyone else to answer for me my
Right.
entire life. My sisters, my mother, my cousins, I came from a very small family. I just kept my mouth shut. And I was always trying to be funny and, wanted everyone to like me. And so I followed the rules and went to ballet like I was supposed to. And all the other things I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be, funny and cute and cooperative and helpful and, I don't know, all those perfect little things, right? I looked like a Barbie doll. I was supposed to act like one. So anyway, and I was a junior, which is even a more dysfunctional thing. Never name your child after you. You go ahead and do it, but it's got some baggage with it. So it's so true. So I moved out, but before I left the marital home, and we only had one. I was there 17 years. And I did everything, the fresco paintings, the carpets, the mirrors, this house that I had done, brought all 3 babies home from the hospital and, breastfed all 3 of them and Earth's Best baby food and, Gymboree and all the things and the play groups and, the hockey mom and the soccer mom. Well, they didn't really play soccer. It was a little bit lacrosse, soccer, baseball, hockey, football. I don't know. What didn't they play?
Right.
Kayaking, fencing, robotics. If it exists, they did it. And I also taught ballet. Worked in performing arts. It was a crazy life. And the husband he was married to the business. He was very, very busy. He was married to his beeper. He was up. Remember beepers? Those were the days. Like
Yeah.
those zip. He would always flip it out and walkie-talkie thing and be like, "Could you not do that at the table, please?" Welcome back to the 80s and 90s, people. So before iPhones. So yeah, I remember like grieving this 12,000 square foot house with an indoor swimming pool, 7 bedrooms and 6-car garage,
Right.
and my heated yoga studio with hand painted chakra flowers and Schonbeck Geo Helix chandeliers. And like I went crazy because I love to decorate. Anybody who knows me knows I love to decorate. People always say,
Right.
"You an interior decorator?" Like you should have been. I got it from my grandmother. But it was grieving, but I saged the house when no one was there.
Good.
My whole woo-woo cried into saged the house, released all negativity and karmic impressions for the children to remain in that, you know, home when they were there, and him, and released myself from the house. I only took my clothing, toiletry, personal items, things that had been given to me as gifts or from my grandmother. I didn't even take the jog. We
Wow.
shared there, as best we could. I only moved 8 miles down the road, but it was just a I moved from 12,000 feet to 1,200 square feet. And I just sat in there with cardboard boxes for probably a month until my friend came over and said, okay, come on, enough of this shit. Let's get our act together here. And I was only in that apartment 6 months or something, but it was just a matter of not knowing where I wanted to live. Right?
Right.
It's terrifying.
Right.
It's exciting though. I mean, if my husband were to walk in and say, "Hey, honey, we're moving," I'd be like, if it was somewhere safe, I'd be like, "Really?" I think that's super cool. Whereas it's very scary. But when I was in the situation, I would walk around room by room, and there were 20 something rooms, and I would thank them for the memories.
Yes.
I'd
That's
walk into Nicolette's room
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I'd remember what her room looked like when I brought her home, because it was just painted and it was just the crib that my mother had gotten and my parents had gotten, and then the changing table my mother-in-law and father-in-law had gotten, and they were Victorian, and but it didn't look like that anymore. She was now a teenager, but back when she was a baby, like I tried to remember that, and also like let it go,
Yes.
because that's not where we're at anymore, and really, like when you have a thought, you thank you for coming. I appreciate you visiting. Thanks for the memories, thanks for being a part of my life, and then letting them go. It's not easy.
Right.
But I'm glad I did that. And of course I took a lot of photographs, and but yeah, I love that you have them do this entry. And then how do you take it from there? What do they do then?
Well, I want to comment that, how wonderful that you went from room to room to like say goodbye of the home, right? And that's actually something that I do with my clients, but in a different way. So, like, I'll walk around with them because we have the big reveal. Everything has been, freshened up or whatever, because I like to like make the home as pretty as possible. So,
Well,
usually
we
we
didn't sell the house. My ex-husband still lives there.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's going to die in that house. It's his favorite house. He loves this house. It's his baby. But I was leaving, and I wanted the house to be a sacred container. So it wasn't a matter of making it pretty. It was a matter
Right.
of me, like,
Right. Like you
yeah,
saying goodbye and releasing, right?
right.
Yeah. So when I do that, though, I have my clients walk with me around the house and do the same thing. So I just wanted to acknowledge that,
Yeah,
you
no,
did
that's
something
wonderful.
that's very
And I
powerful.
didn't have a professional like you doing it with me. It was just my common sense, and my woo-woo training of sacred spaces and gratitude and acknowledging where I came from, where I was, and where I wanted to go.
Right.
It did
That's very
help,
cool.
or I felt. I remember the day actually. The two ladies came over, and it was and then when I bought my first home, which was like, oh gosh, 5 years later, they came and did that from the other one. So
Right.
yeah, it was her name was Sylvia. I remember her. Yeah, very interesting.
Oh,
So let's talk
that's
a little
wonderful.
bit about this buying journey and
Yeah.
how it mirrors inner healing. I had never really thought of that, but the clarity, the reflection, and the growth needed for that to happen. I've never
Right.
equated the buying journey to mirroring that healing journey, but now that you so eloquently, shared that with me, I want to explore that more.
Yeah, so I look at the buying journey and even the selling journey, but the buying journey especially is like the process of transformation. There's a lot of healing that occurs when you start and you decide, I'm going to buy a home, and when you finally finish, close escrow, and you move in, you're a different person. And so, in order for my client to feel really good, really ready to embark on her new life in her new home, I ask her, who is it that you see yourself being when you now sleep in this home, you walk out the door every day, you go and you drive away and come back home? Who is that woman? Because you now have the opportunity to decide what you want your life to be. Now is the time to reinvent your life through your home. And so when we do the consultation of figuring out what it is that they want, it's like, Well, I want to get a better position in my work. And so, I think I would like to live closer to work. Something like that. They just figure out what's important to them. And so, we just go through the process of what's important to you? What is it that you want? Because now there's only you to figure out. And that's scary, but look at the freedom. Look at the power that you now have. And you don't need to decide right away, but take the time to figure out who you are. Like we talk about who they were before the marriage and what did they like about themselves then? And then what is it that they like about themselves now? And what do they see themselves doing in the future? So having that past, present, and future conversation, it sets kind of like our map of how we're going to help transform into who they want to be. And so, when it's the first, it could be the first time that you're buying a home. It's scary. And you're going to come up against the fear. You're going to come up against the frustration. Maybe there's a whole new language you need to learn when it comes to finance and getting a mortgage, or, when it comes to insurance, or figuring out like, how do you find the school? How do you know that the teachers are going to be good? There's so much unknown, but yet knowing that you have the ability to do your due diligence and research and learn and see if what is available to you in this particular home that you might be interested in, is it in alignment with what it is that you want for your life? And then it's like, if we're going through that, there's always fears. It's like, oh my God, I found this house. I really like it. It meets everything I want. I want to make an offer, but I'm scared to get it. So then working through the process of, why are you scared? What things are popping up for you? And then kind of addressing them and reminding my clients that you have power now to create the life you want. So which is more important? The fear of jumping forward when a bank already says you can afford this, right? That fear of becoming independent and being the owner of a new home by yourself. Do you think that you could bypass that fear? Do you think you can confront it? Just be courageous and do it anyway. And when my clients do that, it's so beautiful to watch because, I don't know about you, like when I'm scared, like, I just kind of like freeze, and I sometimes I want to cry because the fear, it feels so strong and it just comes out in that kind of an emotion. But yet to see them move forward and then, check. I'm not forcing you to do anything that you don't want to do. Am I? This really is what you want to do because you're in control. This is your life you're creating. And when they stand there or sit there and say, this is what I want to do, I do want to buy it. So let's make the offer. I'm scared, but I'm going to go for it. Right.
And
And
naturally, we don't want to skip the steps of what can you afford, because the
right.
fear could be, I can't afford it, and I wish I could. You know,
Right.
Mm, uh, you know, for example, our neighbor wants to sell a house, and it is worth what it's worth, and another neighbor wants to buy it, and of course he's like, I want to buy it, and the wife's like, no, we can't afford it. And, it's not that they don't want it. It's like, well, can I afford it? So, you do have to, particularly in divorce, when it comes to settlement offers, what is your debt to income ratio? What is your credit score? Are you employed? Is this a full-time career? Is it a part-time gig? Are you just doing a little side thing like multi-level marketing and making $10,000? You can't buy a house on that. So,
Right.
are you, what's your education, your resume, your ability to make more income? Of course, your age and your health has a lot to do with it too. If
Yes.
you're 30 versus 60, if you're, a healthy, able bodied person versus somebody with a, an ailment, a disease, some sort of disability or in a wheelchair, it's going to be a very different trajectory for what your needs are and what you can afford. And having the right financial advice too. There's nothing worse than being awarded a house in a divorce settlement only to find out that you have to sell it because you can't afford to take over the mortgage. So
Right.
and judges don't typically have the patience for discussing option A, scenario B, and hybrid C. It's just sell everything. So if
Right.
you're litigating, you're also now running the risk of having to sell the house. But
Mhm.
if you're privately mediating, not necessarily. You can be a little bit more rational and have reality testing come into play and reverse engineer your conversations so that both parties feel like they're benefiting more than they're losing and seeing their next chapter of their life as
Right.
a clean break. It is always best to get a clean break. You know,
Yeah.
I would rather somebody leave with less and no debt than
Yes.
more and a boatload of debt, because that's not a clean break. And there's a lot of baggage when it comes to mortgages, car loans, to cars you don't even think that the spouse should have bought, but by the
Right.
way, half of them are yours, and now you have debt and student loans, credit cards, IRS, bankruptcy, goodness, a loan that you got from Aunt Betty, or Uncle Harry, and all of a sudden all this weird little debt starts to creep in when divorce comes into the equation. I did
Right.
a case last week where the husband said, well, if you remember, to the wife listening, we bought a car, or I signed on a car for her daughter from a previous marriage. The child is 26 and lives, I think, overseas. And the child just decided not to pay the, payment. So it
Oh.
was defaulted. And now there's like a $7,000 uh, claim, and
Oh.
it's on he's the signer. So that $7,000 ouch became a contentious issue in the divorce settlement.
Right.
We agreed that they would both take 3,500 and call it a day and move on, but she was, you can see, so something like, wait, oh yeah, remember that car that and I'm sure this happened years ago.
Right. Right.
Forget about these little things. Another client said, yeah, he went out and bought a car. I said, well, he bought you half a car then. So,
Right.
marital assets are marital assets, and marital debt, unfortunately, is marital debt. So
Yes.
then we have to talk about the contents of the house. Forget
Right.
the sheetrock, the carpet, the light fixtures, the the structure. What about the furniture, the mirrors, the artwork, the kitchen stuff? I had a case where they were arguing over Jura coffee makers because they had three of them.
Oh, wow.
So said, well, why do you keep one and he keeps the other, and you sell a third, or give it to a friend, Merry Christmas or something? I don't know. Sell it. And they were, and I don't know if you know much about these coffee makers, but they're like $10,000 each.
Oh, my
These are
goodness.
people that really like coffee, Edith, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, wait, how much are these stupid things? Like, why would you spend this much money on it? No judgment, people, if you have one, I love you. But like in divorce, we're talking 30 grand for worth of coffee makers.
Right.
So other times I've had people fight over guns.
Oh,
I love
wow.
the guns, especially in the South. What's in even the gun safe? Oh, the engagement ring, was it given before the wedding? Was it given after the wedding? Was it upgraded? Was it an heirloom? I bought it, so I should be able to keep it. It was, So anyway, if you go into the weeds of the stuff, I like to call it,
Right.
and,
Right.
and people can get more emotional over artwork and furniture and dining room sets and bedroom sets, and well, I bought that bedroom set with my money, and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yes.
So it isn't always just the house or the
Yes.
container. It's the energy, the negativity, the jealousy, the arm wrestling, the tug of war that I see in mediation and with coaching, because a lot of attorneys, and God, how I love you all. Most of my friends are attorneys, but they don't really want to deal with the weeds of coffee makers. I
Right.
mean, they will, and they'd love to charge you an hourly rate for that, and no problem. It's really just a spreadsheet and a domestic relations financial affidavit of all of your stuff. And if you want to, spend $5,000 on hourly billable hours to put together the work, and some of those things might also need to be appraised if they're,
Hmm.
I don't know, reasonably valuable, like an heirloom or some sort of piece of art collection, um, coins,
Hmm.
gold. Those things can be deal breakers, right? But when
Yes.
it comes down to it, if you bought a couch for $1,000 and it's 10 years old, it's
Right.
put it out on the end of the driveway. Maybe
Right.
somebody's like, I had another couple, they were like, you can take the couch. No, you can take the couch, because apparently the dog ate the couch. I said, you two are being very silly.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants a couch that's eaten by a dog, but it was
Right.
a
Right.
control thing, right, Edith?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Who's got more power?
exactly, I know. And that's the beautiful thing about private mediation and the work I do in Better Divorce Blueprint, is really helping them come down off the ledge, looking at it from a practical point of view, that if you're going to litigate, this is likely the outcome the judge would award you, meaning
Yes.
you as a family, as a couple. And are you okay with that? Because if you are, let me write it up, and I just saved you 50 grand, and two
Right.
years in court. Now, if it's not what you want, great. What is and what isn't? And let's negotiate and alternatively dispute resolve that argument. But real estate is a very sticky spot, particularly if there's a beach house, a ski house, a lake house, a summer house, not the regular boring schoolhouse. Forgive the sarcasm there, but the fun house, right? Those
Yes.
were the
Vacation
houses that
homes.
people
Hmm.
can arm wrestle over, more so because that's where we always celebrated blank,
Hmm.
and it also comes down to it, if there's a business entity where there's a brick and mortar for either the wife or the spouse's husband's career, not rental property, but you make an investment. Maybe there's a practice or a dentist office or a chiropractic officer where they buy a building and they design a building and it's now an asset. And this is also where the income is coming from to pay child support and alimony. And if you sell that, then so that's where things can get a little bit muddy with income and evaluations of property and appraisals. But I love the fact that you are connecting the emotional aspect of the real estate. Unfortunately, I see that too many people put too much emphasis on the emotional aspect of it. Um, but on opposition to that, I see most people put too much financial emphasis on it. It should be that you consider both points of view and both
Absolutely.
aspects. There is the value and the authenticity and the validation and integrity of your experiences in the marriage in those properties, be it personal, vacation, or business. But when it comes down to it, what are the taxes? What's the
Right.
insurance? What's your income? How old are you? Do you really want to mow a lawn? Do you like
Right.
cleaning pools? Do you want a landscape? Is this neighborhood really it's so fabulous, or is it just a fantasy that you're staying married to?
Right.
Lots to think about, and having
Right.
an expert like you, walk through it is beneficial. When I got divorced there, I don't think any of these things existed because it's been a while now, but thank God for Cheryl Richardson's book, Take Time for Your Life. I
Yeah.
highly recommend it. It's very old. She talks about CDs and all kinds of things in the book. It's, from the 90s. But Cheryl Richardson's from Manchester, Massachusetts, and grew up in the Boston area. And I met her in the infancy of life coaching, when life coaching wasn't really a thing. And she was actually one of the first life coaches. And I met her in New York at the Hay House convention with
Mhm.
Louise Hay. It was fascinating. And Cheryl really gave me a good slap on the wrist and said, get your act together, girl. You got so much going for you and you can help so many other people. But think about the name of the
That.
title of that book, Take Time for Your Life.
Yes.
Like that's what divorce does, is really to step back and go, oh, all right. And sometimes it's quitting a job too.
Mhm.
Any life change, right? So, and she talks about that in her book. So, um, what's the best way for people to learn more about your work and your story and follow you and reach out to you so that they can get the help they need manifesting the house they deserve?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I do have a website where people can contact me. It's at edithespinola.com, and it's about either real estate or about coaching for manifestation. And I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. My Instagram handle is Edith Espinola underscore or Edith underscore Espinola.
Perfect. Well, this is a great conversation because 73% of divorce is initiated by women, and
Yeah.
86% of divorce involves the sale or purchase of real estate. So, just wanted to make sure everyone was reminded of that fact. There's a lot of people out there have these concerns. Don't make a mistake. Don't just sell the house and get resentful about it. Take your time. Really do the homework you have. And I suggest giving it a good sage and a good blessing before you leave, so you can take the good and leave behind what does not serve you. And for those of you that need help and guidance, you're either organizing, budgeting, surviving divorce, don't go it alone. Get Better Divorce Blueprint. It's on Amazon, the book, the workbook, and the audiobook. And yes, my online course is coming out very soon. So check out Better Divorce Academy. And you know how to find me, Paulette at betterdivorceacademy.com. And until next time, make it better. That's it. That was
Oh
wonderful.
my